Well, Manso, Clay Ferraro, the latest Miami Sports Pod, and the latest Miami Dolphins win. Clay, it's 4 in a row. Tua Tagovailoa, another 3 touchdown, no turnover performance. The offense clicking in every which way against the Browns. And the defense, after a slow start, made enough plays, and it never really felt like much of a game by the second half where Miami dominated. But as it stands now, because of the Bills' wild loss to the Vikings, Miami Dolphins head to the bye week as the top team in the AFC East. First place, Clay, at 7-3. How surprised are you at this point, heading to the bye, 10 weeks in, that the Dolphins are in first place?
What is it like to work in a market where your team isn't winning every weekend? I can get used to it. Right? What is this? I mean, what is it like to cover a team that's not in first place? It just seems like old. No, I surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised. I still thought as of a couple of weeks ago that Buffalo was the class of the AFC. And I got to be honest with you, it's not even so much that the Bills have fallen off. It's just like the Dolphins seem to grow every week. And I thought Sunday was their most complete performance of the season. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about, they had a couple of penalties early on and you were like, all right, well, let's not fall back into that. And they didn't. And it's just the way this thing is clicking right now is beautiful. Now, hopefully they don't lose too much with the pass rush with Emmanuel Ogbah being out for the year now. Mm-hmm. Bradley Chubb obviously looks like a much more important acquisition now even than it did at the time. But every team's going to deal with injuries. And, I've just been super impressed by how this Dolphins team has come together and, the adversity of that 3-game losing streak, how they've overcome that.
Yeah, and when you look at the pieces of that, we talk so much about Tua and what he means to this team, and obviously in those losses, he wasn't there to finish games. You mentioned the Ogbah injury, but they just got Chubb, and Ogbah really has kind of gotten pushed off to the side for a guy that's been so good the last few years and has had a strong NFL career. He hasn't really been a focal point of the defense. You hate to lose him for depth, obviously, for a defense that at times it struggled. But when I get back to the initial question, Clay, there's a bigger picture here. And look, we'll talk a little bit about the Browns win in the particulars, as far as Tua's performance. And I really want to get into the ground game and the 1-2 punch with Mostert and Wilson. But I think that there's something I'm taking away from this now that, Clay, maybe even a month ago, as you just referenced about the Bills, maybe even a month ago, I would have thought was a little crazy to say, and it wouldn't have been a slight to the Dolphins because the Dolphins are a team that's clearly building and headed in the right direction. But I think as it stands right now, it's not even about the records. It's not even about the standings. It's just about the way the teams look. I think the Miami Dolphins are a better football team right now than the Buffalo Bills. That sounds crazy to say, because we know that Buffalo, given how close they got last year, given the pieces they have and the weapons, Josh Allen, all the things that they have, they are a true contender. But I think what this shows is that maybe we spent so much time, not just us, but I think everyone else, trying to figure out what the Dolphins were, that we've lost the sight of. They jumped from fringe playoff team to legitimate contender. And look, as it stands right now, as we talk now and the Dolphins head to the bye week, I say that with confidence that I think they could be as good and maybe right now are better than Buffalo. In a month, just like a month ago, that sounded crazy. In a month from now, it may sound crazy to have said that, because then you may look at Buffalo as putting it together again and they're the team that we thought they'd be, and maybe the Dolphins take a step back. That's possible, right? But as it stands now, Clay, it's not crazy to say. And again, it's not even about the record. It's not just because they're 7-3 and they're a half game up and they're in first place. It's the way they're playing. You watch games all around the league, Clay, and I know you spend your Sundays doing the same as fans do. You look at this league and every game is close. Every great quarterback has off days. Every game has where you see the weaknesses of teams. And while the Dolphins defense hasn't been exactly great, when you watch the Dolphins, they make things look easy on offense. And the stuff they do offensively, and the passes Tua makes, and the completions, the guys running open, and the tight windows, and all the running game, the way they played, it's not supposed to be this easy. This team is legitimately that good. And I put them in that category now where they're one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the NFL, maybe top 3 right now, and a true contender.
Yeah, well, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you have to take the information that you have available to you right now. And your opinion, you're allowed to change your opinion from week to week because what you're seeing changes. I mean, I'll give
that's
you
not playing the results. That's just teams evolve and change. Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, last week I was sitting here saying Tyreek Hill was the MVP, and you were saying Tua. Well, now I'm ready to agree with you after seeing what Tua
Thank you.
And here's why, by the way. And we'll get to the. But I thought Sunday was really Tua's opus. If he's an orchestrator, the 7 different Dolphins players caught multiple passes from Tua. We're not just talking about, and I follow the Saints, and you would have games where Drew Brees would complete passes to 10 different guys, and it was great to see. And yet, you had like 4 or 5 guys and only caught 1 ball. Like Sunday, what Tua did, it's multiple passes to all of these guys. And so to your point about, the Dolphins moving up to, one of the top 2 or 3 teams in all of football. And I would say at this point, Will,
you think they're better than the Bills right now?
Right now, yes. And again, I didn't think that 2 weeks ago, but things change. And what we're seeing with this Dolphins team right now, I think the best thing I can say, and this is a credit to Mike McDaniel and the players in that locker room, this team has come together quicker than I think we all thought it was going to. I think we've been saying from the beginning with this is not like a recent thing. We think they're on the right track. We like what Mike McDaniel does. We like what we're seeing out of Tua Tagovailoa. This is not new to say we like the direction they're going in. What is new is that it's come together so fast. And on Sunday, look, I understand that we were hoping, that to see a Dolphins team that took advantage of the weaker part of the schedule, but taking advantage of it like that, doing what they did on Sunday. And look, Will, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but I'll tell you, there were multiple guys in the media circles when we were doing locker room interviews this week. We'd walk out, and there were people who cover the team that were saying, you know what, I just think this is the week. It just feels like this is a week that there's going to be a loss. And they were looking
Throw them under the bus. Throw them. We won't tell.
I'm not going to.
But I've heard the same thing.
I'm not going to say names. I'm not going to. No, but I think there was a feeling of, hey, all right, they've been really good the last couple of weeks, but this is just the natural flow of an NFL season. You're due for a letdown, or the other team's going to come in and Cleveland, with how they run the football, they're going to make it difficult on you. But Will, I mean, so you then have to say, okay, that didn't happen, and you have to give the Dolphins credit because you can only beat the teams that are in front of you. And the way they did it on Sunday, I was blown away to where, yes, I'm ready to put them ahead of the Buffalo Bills as we sit here on Sunday. What is this? November 13th, whatever it is, November 12th. I'm ready to say the Dolphins are the best team in the AFC East. I put them up in the top 3 right now with Philadelphia and
Eagles, Chiefs, Dolphins, right? I think those are the best 3 teams in the league right now. Eagles, Chiefs, Dolphins. Yes. I still, and that's why, by the way, the flip-flopping, the win by the Dolphins, and there's many more games to come. So playoff positioning is tough to talk about 10 weeks in because so much will change. But every game the Bills lose and the Dolphins win is a huge step to the Dolphins getting to the goal of getting to a Super Bowl. And Tua doubled down this week. He was asked again about, hey, you made those comments a couple of weeks back, how you said, hey, we don't shy away. We're not afraid of the Super Bowl talk. And he said, yeah, why would we be? And if you really aren't afraid of that and you really can talk about it, the best route to a Super Bowl, right, is to have home games in the playoffs. And we can have that conversation now. The Dolphins are 7-3. They're looking great. There's no reason we can't have that conversation. It's not some pipe dream and that we're crazy. But when things like that happen, where the Bills lose games like that, the way they did, and the Dolphins win a game and they flip-flop like that in the standings, all of a sudden, the dream and the chasing of that dream of a potential Super Bowl is there, because the Chiefs are the team that worries me most because of Patrick Mahomes, obviously, the weapons, the way they play offense. Going to Kansas City in January is a tough ask. And to beat Patrick Mahomes in that situation is a tough ask. But the Dolphins are positioning themselves now where if they can get home games, that's why these games matter so much. And Clay, when you talk about the best teams in the league as it stands now, I think we can say with comfort that Tua is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL now. And last week you referenced it. We had the discussion about, Tyreek Hill, Tua, MVP, and that'll change week to week.
Yeah. I'll be back on the Tyreek train in 2 weeks. So he'll have, yeah.
He's been phenomenal. But what's crazy about Tua is that every quarterback struggles, right? At some point in the year, 17-game schedule now, quarterbacks will struggle. And you've seen it with just about every quarterback in the NFL. But since Tua's come back from a concussion, remember, a concussion where people were questioning whether he should play again. And when I say people, we're talking national media. And there was all these narratives about what the Dolphins did wrong, the way they handled it. Is Tua putting himself at risk? I mean, we all remember that was just a month ago. In that month, Tua's been the best quarterback in the NFL. In that month, he hasn't thrown an interception. In that month, the Dolphins have not lost a game. And in that month, he's catapulted himself right to the top of the MVP conversation. I don't know what else we can say about Tua, Clay, about what he's become. First of all, his dad fit on his pregame outfits is incredible. This is me dropping my kids off at school. I wear the shirt that's sort of like I want to look cool, but I'm not sure if it's 100% cool. But then I wear the pants that absolutely the shorts that don't match at all. The only difference between me and Tua is that he's maybe the most accurate quarterback in the NFL, and I can't throw a ball more than 10 yards. No, but when you look at that's it. That's all. But when you look at what he's done, Clay, I mean, the throws he makes, I think we take for granted. I really do. I think we waited so long in the last 2 years to figure out what Tua might be that we've lost sight of what he is. And he is the most accurate passer in the NFL. The way the ball placement that he has, the way he flings the ball over the field with ease. I mean, it's not supposed to be this easy. And we have the conversation every week. And I go back to what I said earlier, Clay. You watch incredible NFL quarterbacks at the top of their game miss 3 or 4 throws a game, throw interceptions, throw behind receivers, throw bad passes. Right now, we're not seeing that from Tua at all.
No, it's stunning. And there were a couple of plays over the last couple of weeks that really kind of crystallized it for me. Because you're right. I mean, we've talked about his accuracy for a long time and how accurate he is. But it was in the context of, okay, when stuff is going right, or you have the player wide open, or like you're throwing him open because you can see a little separation there. But there were 2 plays over the last 2 weeks that really hit me. It was the play on Sunday. It was early in the game against Cleveland where Tyreek Hill had this deep out, but Tua threw it before Tyreek even started going out. Like not when he started his break, much less when he started to turn around for the football. It was before he even started the out cut.
And it was on the money. And it was on the money.
It was on the money. And so it was that anticipation and being on the same page, but also that sense for the game. And the other one that, again, it was early in the game. It was in Chicago. It was, I think, on the first drive. And what I think it was zone coverage because you can't play against the Dolphins man anymore. It's impossible. Jalen Waddle is going down. And Tua, it almost looks like a shortstop that's throwing to first base when he loses his handle on the ball and he just kind of like hitches for a second. And I was like, oh man, I wonder if Tua lost control of the ball or he had to get reset. But when they showed the wide angle replay, he was holding it almost like he was throwing an ephus pitch in baseball, like just holding it a little while to wait for the safety to clear out of the way. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I ever remember seeing a quarterback slow down his motion in mid-throwing motion to wait to allow a defensive back to clear the zone to let Jalen Waddle get. I don't like that's the type of thing that when you're watching quarterbacks and you say, oh, I've never seen anybody do that before. We've seen those sorts of moments from Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes over the last couple of years. That was a moment from Tua where I literally said to myself, I have never seen a quarterback do anything like that before. And so it's, when we talk about
we've seen that week in and week out with him.
Yeah. And so, it's no longer about what he could be. It's about who he is. And right now he's the MVP of the league and leading maybe the best offense in all of football.
There is only a handful of quarterbacks in this league. Mahomes and Allen on physical traits. Maybe you say you can, at full health, you would put above Tua right now, but but that's about it. I mean, and again, there may be people argue, well, this guy's maybe got more physical traits, but this guy's more talented than Tua. I'm getting to the point where I think because of Tua's stature, right? Because he's not a big dude. And we've had this conversation about Tua. Tua's a big guy. He's a strong guy, but not the prototypical 6'4", 6'5" guy. He's not like that. For years we spent thinking about who's the next Dan Marino for the Dolphins, right? Replacing Marino, being the next Marino. It didn't have to be a physical clone of Marino. It was not about stature and look. It was about ability and production. The production Tua is putting up now rivals what Dan did in those incredible seasons, like the 85 season and all these great years at 84. And that doesn't mean that Tua is better than Marino. That doesn't mean that when it's all said and done, he's going to surpass Marino. But I think the level he's playing that now is that level. And again, all we can go by is what we're seeing now. In a month from now, and that's not playing the results, Clay, a month from now, this is a different conversation maybe. Because maybe Tua does hit a bump in the road. Maybe the Dolphins do have some things that don't go their way, and all of this fluidness that you see on offense isn't happening. But I'm getting to the point now, we're 10 weeks in. This isn't a hot streak. This isn't a fluke. This is the Dolphins offense. And a big reason why is Mike McDaniel, who I want to talk about in a moment, the midpoint, but I also want to talk about the 1-2 punch at running back. We spent so much time talking about Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, deservedly so, as maybe the best 1-2 punch. I get the maybe out of there. The best 1-2 punch at receiver in the NFL. But now with the addition of Jeff Wilson and reuniting him in his San Fran backfield with Mike McDaniel with Raheem Mostert, Clay, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row now. We really saw it against Cleveland. This ground game and the way that McDaniel can choose to use it in key moments in the game, especially in a game against Sunday against the Browns where they had the lead and you didn't have to fling it 45 times. It's impressive. I think it's legit. I love the power that Wilson brings, the angriness he runs in. We've already seen the speed and the elusiveness in playmaking that Mostert and the ability he has. It's also one of the better 1-2 punches, I think, right now in the league when they're healthy. These guys can really be a productive unit that when you combine it with what Waddle and Hill are doing, that's some scary time weapons for the Dolphins on offense.
And it's a couple of guys that when they get the ball in space, they're extremely dangerous. And what you're seeing right now with this Dolphins offense really is what we've seen in San Francisco. It's what we saw at times in Atlanta when Kyle Shanahan was there. It's when you have this scheme where guys can get the ball on the edge and in space because you've got all these other weapons that the defense is worried about, it's dangerous. So, I think it's not like taking away from what Mostert and Wilson are doing to say that they're benefiting from having all of this other talent around them. No, it's just fact. But their skill set, and this Mike McDaniel deserves credit for recognizing the skill set. Their skill set is perfect for this offense and this running game and how it's designed, because when you get in space on the outside, on the perimeter, these are two guys who are extremely dangerous. And so it's, again, you have to give so much credit to McDaniel for orchestrating all this. And I know that's where you're going with this at the midpoint and how he's doing coaching this team. He deserves a ton of credit because he knows how to maximize the skill sets of these two players who were not viewed as being like indispensable anywhere else. I mean, look, Jeff Wilson was good in San Francisco.
Yeah, and he's been in the league a while. Jeff Wilson's not a guy who's just been in the league 2 years. I mean, he's been in the league a handful of years now.
Yeah, and two undrafted guys, but again, you recognize the skill set and the fit and how they work in this offense. And in San Francisco, there was when they bring in Christian McCaffrey and they've got Elijah Mitchell coming back from injury. It was perfect that McDaniel knew the skill set, the fit, knew the player, and was able to bring him in. And then you do have to give credit to Mostert and Wilson for making the most of the opportunity. And right now it's fun to watch, and it was cool to see Wilson was going in for that touchdown. And it was funny because we were talking to Tyreek Hill after the game because you saw Tyreek Hill like celebrating with him because Hill was out as the lead blocker. Then he realizes there's nobody to block, and he turns around and so somebody made a mention. Tyreek said he had actually wanted to like do backflips over Wilson or something, but he was afraid that he was going to get a 15-yard penalty if he had done it. So he didn't want.
Probably. I think most offenses just hold their breath afraid that he might get hurt. Yeah, the last thing he needs is him to get hurt in a celebration. No, they're having fun. And I want to get to McDaniel in a moment, but I feel like it wouldn't be a fair podcast to what the Dolphins have done and where they sit now at 7-3, again, in first place in the AFC East heading into this bye, to not mention the offensive line improvement. Part of it is, yes, the anticipation of Tua to get rid of the ball. And look, there was a couple times on Sunday against Cleveland where he was pressured quickly and Tua just got rid of it. A couple of the few incompletions he had where he threw the ball away.
Sorry, because it's just top of mind. I'll forget about it. Tua is doing a much better job of doing that, by the way. He's getting rid of the ball.
Recognizing it. Yeah, absolutely.
And the only reason why I'm interrupting you is because like I want the what do they say? Keep the same energy. I want the apology to be as loud as the criticism. That's the one thing I've been extremely critical of him about is
holding the ball too long.
Too tough for his own good. And I thought there was one play in particular, I think it was a 2nd and 16, where there was like a second where he was going to try to break away and like try to make a play, but then he just saw a back sitting over there. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to throw it at his feet. 3rd and 16 is fine right now because it'll keep me upright. And so anyway, I didn't mean to. No, I knew I was going to forget.
No, I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you said it because you saw where I was going. I think it's a combination of things. You have to give credit to the offensive line. They've been better. They just have. And the ground game. Look, it's not like as much as I love the way Wilson. I mentioned he runs angry and Mostert's got the speed. You got to have holes there, and they're doing a really nice job of opening holes, of finding space, of communicating well. And when you go to the protecting Tua part, yeah, there are times, but it's nothing like it was a month ago, 6 weeks ago. A month ago, we were having the discussion of like, do you even want Tua behind this offensive line when he is healthy because of the hits that he would need to take? Now, to your point, Tua's doing a much better job of recognizing when he needs to get the ball out. And sometimes it's just dumping off to running back for a 3-yard gain or 5-yard gain. Sometimes it's, as you said, throw it at the feet of someone in front of you and live to see the next down. That's Tua just being better and growing and being a smart quarterback. But I think we can't just not say at some point the offensive line has shown immense improvement. I think they deserve a lot of credit for that, because we a month ago were questioning this offensive line, and we in the same way have to have the same energy, I think, to say, hey, you guys, you've heard, I don't know if you heard the criticism or not, but you clearly are playing much better. And I think that's a credit to Mike McDaniel and his staff for making sure that they get the best of those guys, and a credit to those guys to, being much improved in the last 4 or 5 weeks. Now, let's go to McDaniel. Clay, you talked about the celebration with Tyreek Hill, and it led me into where I was going. This team's having fun. This team's having a ton of fun. And when you look at Mike McDaniel at midseason, people call him quirky. People call him different. People say he's unique. People say he's kind of, the way he speaks and the things he says are different than most head coaches. But the one thing you will find that is not unique about him, meaning, this is not something that you haven't seen before. This is not something that it's actually a key requisite for a head coach, is that you got to have your players believe in you, right? And the successful coaches, not always funny, not always serious. They don't have to be the line doesn't have to be Bill Belichick and Mike McDaniel or no other way. There could be a middle ground. And I think what Mike McDaniel's proven is that there's no right way as far as the way you deal with the media, the way you deal with, the players, as far as the way you talk about them. But there is a way behind the scenes, the way you handle things, to have your players buy in. And the one thing we know about Mike McDaniel and his team, Clay, they bought in. They've 100% bought into his style of coaching and what he's selling.
Yeah, here's the blueprint for a successful head coach, and it's much easier said than done. You have to be genuine. And I think that's the thing with Mike McDaniel. Like, you talk about him being quirky, and you talk about, there's this wide spectrum of Bill Belichick to McDaniel, and most people are in the middle somewhere, but you have to be you, because players will see through that. And the other thing is you have to teach. You have to have that ability to reach players. And the thing I think we've seen with him and Tua is he recognized with Tua that in many ways he's dealt with, he's been beaten down. And Tua, he didn't use the words beaten down, but Tua said, my whole life I've had coaches that coached me a certain way. And he referenced Nick Saban. He referenced his father. I don't think he referenced Brian Flores directly, but I think we kind of knew where he was going with that. Oh, yeah. And Mike McDaniel, I think, recognized that it was time for Tua to be reached in a different way. And he's doing it. And the other thing with McDaniel, he came in here, and I think he called it the ADD generation. But his point was, when you're dealing with younger players, you have to find a way to hit them really quickly and find a way to get your message across. And I think he's been so successful in doing that. And the last thing I want to say, because it happened this week and it stuck out to me, and it was like, how Sean McVay, like, everybody jokes around about his like insane memory and how he can remember there was a point, and Mike McDaniel was asked about Tyreek Hill, and he was asked, when did you know, both on the field and off the field, that he was different, that he was special? And Mike McDaniel, when he was talking about the good part of it, he knew specifically it was the fourth OTA, like the third practice period, when they ran this specific route, and Tyreek Hill ran it so perfectly, blah, blah, blah. And then when he was talking about the one time that he had to call out Tyreek Hill for something he didn't do right, all of a sudden Mike McDaniel's memory got hazy. And it's been you've seen this with him, where he will, when something goes wrong, it's all Mike McDaniel's fault. When something goes right, it's all the players who get the credit. And players, like, you don't now. Behind closed doors, I guarantee you it ain't always like that. I guarantee you that when a player screws up, but McDaniel realizes it does no good for him or the guys in that locker room to come out publicly and say something negative. All that matters is how he handles things in that locker room, and that he doesn't go behind their back and throw them under the bus publicly. And so, when you're talking about somebody doing a great job coaching. Like, it's easier said than done, but you have to be yourself. You have to be a great teacher. You have to reach players and earn their trust. And I think those are the three things that Mike McDaniel has done really quickly. And, oh, by the way, you got to do a good job and you got to scheme things up. But I think we're seeing more and more the importance of getting players to buy in and trust you. And that's what this Dolphins team has done.
Do you know when I bought into Mike McDaniel? I'll do the moment I bought into Mike McDaniel was not when he got here, because I loved everything he said, but I know that talking to the media and being, the unique guy he is has nothing to do with wins and losses. And we talked about that through the offseason, that he will be judged on his results as every head coach. It's not necessarily just the fact that he's an offensive genius. And obviously his style of game plan and his offense is just perfect right now for what this team has. He has used his genius, right? His offense, and found the way to get the most out of all his players and put Tua in this comfort zone. But even then, I sort of expected that, because that's why I came here for. What impressed me most about Mike McDaniel, where it really got me and said, okay, Mike McDaniel's the real deal, is when he faced adversity. This team was 3-3. They lost their quarterback. There were all the questions. Remember, we were having conversations. It was like same old Dolphins, and not necessarily because of results, but because the Dolphins were making news for reasons that had nothing to do with football. The way they handled the concussion protocol. What did they force Tua out there, put him out there? Did they not care? And Mike McDaniel was taking a lot of that heat to the point where he had to sit there and answer questions. Yes, Ben, you're right. Ben, but remember that week and a half where there were articles written everywhere, and there were questions to McDaniel constantly at news conferences about the way he handled that situation. And again, on the field product was 3-3. Clay, that's only a month ago, and it's a distant memory. They're 7-3. And to be able to deal with that in-season adversity and not let your team fall apart, if anything, grow from it, to me is the sign of a good head coach. And Mike McDaniel right now has proven to be a good head coach. So at mid-season, the Dolphins 7-3.
Yeah, and this is not to pat ourselves in the back, but I think we both said it after that third loss. I think this is where we will find out what kind of coach Mike McDaniel and what kind of head coach. Yeah, and he showed it. And that's not like, I remember, and we talked about this too, that, when he was saying all the funny things and quirky things in the offseason, the one thing you always got from cynical fans was, this isn't going to be so funny after they lose 3 games in a row. And they were right.
They did. They lost 3 games in a row.
And guess what? There was no funny that week. Yeah. What he did was he went to work. And so what I'm extremely encouraged by from a Dolphins perspective is the fact that he was able to, not that we thought that like there was just this funny personality and nothing behind it, but he proved it. He proved that when things get rough, when the going gets tough, so to speak, he was able to rally everybody together, and like all that funny, quirky stuff that players would see right through if things were going poorly, and if they did not buy in and did not trust him, it instead galvanized them. And so, no, I think, and look, it's such a what have you done for me lately league. We could have a different conversation.
Again, a month from now, this could be a totally different conversation. I understand that.
But right now, I'm blown away. And just like you, it's because of how he has gotten this team to respond to adversity. Because he can respond great to adversity, but if he doesn't find a way to get that across the team, doesn't matter.
Yeah, this is a 24th or 25th team that I've covered, Dolphins team I've covered, and I've never had a team to me that's been more fun than this, that looks like they're having more fun. And there have been some great teams over the last 25 years, and teams that there have been some bad teams too, and there have been some mediocre teams. But as far as fun, the smiles, the energy, the dance celebrations, the high fives, you mentioned the stuff about Tyreek Hill and Wilson and the running backs and joking around, the camaraderie at practice, the dances that Tua does with his players before they start every practice. I don't recall a team that has that kind of kid energy at all times, really embracing and loving every moment. And I think that's a reflection of the head coach, because you know what? This isn't about pitting Brian Flores against Mike McDaniel, though you read between the lines a lot of what Tua says, and it sure sounds like it is when he's talking about the difference. But this team, for the first time in a while, looks like they're having fun. And winning is fun. But even when they lost, they maintained that personality and that sense of enjoyment that's now going through. So, Clay, I'll get a final thought as we go into the bye week. What do you expect from the Dolphins the rest of the way? Can they keep up this pace? Can Tua keep putting up these numbers? Can this offense keep clicking? And is the defense in any way you think showing signs that they will be better when these games get into that, especially that West Coast and that 3-game road trip that they'll have later in the season?
So, I mean, the schedule is going to get tougher. And so, as far as keeping up the current pace where they win I'm not going to sit here and say
not win, but click the way they click offensively.
And that's where, I don't think that's just going to go away. Now, I don't think it's going to look as easy as it has necessarily lately, but I also think that what you're seeing with this offense too, as it goes from week to week, it's no longer just reliant on, not that it ever was, but if you can find a way to take away Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, which good luck with that. But now you got Sherfield making plays, and Sherfield's a guy who can line up all over and make plays. Alec Ingold, you're starting to see them use him like San Francisco.
Gesicki will still get his catch or two where he'll make a play, and the running backs.
I just think you're seeing more of you're seeing the offense, it's not just the base level of the Mike McDaniel offense. It's every week you're seeing this offense grow more and more, the quarterback knowing where he's. So it's not, to me, it's now they're finding multiple ways to beat you. And so even if you have a game or two where defenses figure out how to take away a thing or two that you do well, I'm more confident now that there's more in the bag that the Dolphins can go to. And to me, that's extremely encouraging.
I agree. Encouraging is a great word to end this podcast. If you take a word away, it's encouraging. It's outstanding. It's unbelievable. And it's incredible. Throw every adjective out there what the Miami Dolphins have done. At 7-3, they have kind of, I'm not sure if it's exceeded expectations, because I know from within they thought this, but I certainly think from the outside, to be one of the best teams in the NFL legitimately, to have a quarterback play of Tua as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL legitimately, is not a place that I think a lot of people thought they'd be, and it's exactly where they are heading to the bye. We'll be back, of course, next week. We'll be probably talking some Heat, some other stuff as the Dolphins get a nice little break, but they'll be back in action with the stretch run coming at 7-3 as it stands right now in first place in the AFC East. We appreciate you listening and watching Miami Sports Pod.